Good afternoon. My name is Sue Walker, and sitting next to me here, the gentleman in the nice hat, is my spouse, Reverend White Otter. We're happy to be here. We recommend that you choose a seat where you can see what we're going to present to you on the screen very easily. We have a lot of information to go through both here and in our course tonight and the repeat of the course on Sunday night. But we have a really, really interesting story to tell all you guys about Sasquatch, E.T., and their telepathic connections. So is everybody all set? All right. We want to say thank you to the Sandia Mountain crew for all their help and friendship. They've given us the information that we are about to share with you. So here's my shameless self-promotional blurb. The Sasquatch illustrations you see coming down the hallway here and in the building next to us in that hallway, after I left the conference here last year, our local Sasquatch clan leader came to me and asked me specifically, would you please draw us as we see each other, not as monsters? I don't care which nation you pick. We'll send anybody to you that you want to pose for you, but just portray us as we really are. And so I went home from last year's conference, and from the last week of September until the second week of February, I did 60 portraits, 60. I brought the best 40 here, and they are for sale. Save a couple that are our favorites. But if you're interested in any of them, just come see Otter or myself. So who are we? Well, my career since 1990 has been a full-time, professional, detail, clairvoyant, and medical intuitive. I've worked with the CIA, the FBI, the GBI, FEMA, Homeland Security, and a few other agencies we don't want to talk about. But that's because I'm honest and I provide extreme details. And it's a skill that I've had and utilized and taught for more than 27 years. So when it comes to the paranormal world, not only do I know about it, I've probably had my hands in it and investigated it or dealt with it or taught about it. Now, this guy over here in the hat, he started before I did. And we didn't get together with each other until 2013. And so he started his journey of understanding this whole unusual realm of the seen and the unseen back in 1984. So you add up our experience, folks, and you got 60 plus years of hands-on experience that even for the paranormal world touches the extreme. So if you got questions about strange things that happen to you, come see us, we'll talk about it. But I wanted to give you a little bit of that background so that you understand a little bit more about what got put in our laps. So, although the story that we are about to tell you sounds like fiction, it's 100% real. We were there. We aren't going to embellish or exaggerate. But fair warning, you are about to enter into an area of high strangeness. But then again, considering the particular nature of this Sasquatch conference, maybe not. So White Otter and I were asked to come here to speak at this event and talk to you all about telepathy and ET and Big Brother. But it was who asked us to come all the way from New Mexico to teach you that might surprise you. Now, honest admission time, Otter and I do not have the hours out in the field, out in the woods, out where Big Brother lives, researching that many of you do. We don't. We'd love to go. We'd love to be invited. But we're here because we were given the ET Sasquatch Telepathy piece and asked to come teach you. And the people that sent us to you want you to understand how all this is connected. But before we get into all of that, we got to diverge just real briefly into something else. So this is Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and he worked for the U.S. Air Force for about 20 years on various UFO projects. Okay, it was Dr. Hynek that developed this unusual way of classifying unusual, unique experiences and encounters with UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and folks that are not from Earth. The Hynek scale is sometimes referred to as the Close Encounters scale. So, what's a close encounter of the first kind? You've heard of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So let's walk you through, because you guys need to know these things, because this is kind of what you guys are out there experiencing, so pay attention. Close encounter of the first kind. I saw a light in the sky, I saw a UFO. You witness something. You observe it nearby, but it doesn't seem to either interact with you or the environment. It's just light in the sky, blipped off, that was neat, oh cool. Okay, that's a CE1. Close encounter of the second kind is when something else happens. There's a physical effect, either with a person, or you, or the environment nearby, whether it's a crop circle, residual radiation, some kind of an effect on the witness or the environment. That's a CE2. CE3, or close encounter of the third kind, is when somebody else is there. Doesn't matter if they're an android, a robot, human, non-human. If somebody else is there, they call it a CE3, or a close encounter of the third kind. So what's a CE4? That's when something really trippy happens, okay? It's where there's a transformation of your perception of what you think of as, quote, normal reality. All right? It doesn't matter if you feel like you were abducted, not abducted, but if it's absurd, hallucinatory, dreamlike, lost time, all of these things. If something trippy happened, you had a CE4. So what's a CE5? Close encounter of the fifth kind is where the Star Nation folks and you decide to have a voluntary back and forth communication. You talk to each other. You talk back and forth. So that's a CE5. Our CE5 began in September of 2013 and is still ongoing. Let me say that again. In the fall, in September, this month, 4 years ago, we first got contacted. We're still in constant communication on a regular daily basis. Maybe we better tell you how it all got started, huh? So today, this guy and I are married, and we live in the Albuquerque area. And from our backyard, if you look east, we have this beautiful view of the Sandia Mountain. Okay, this is the Sandia Mountain. But back in September of 2013, I was just getting to know this guy. And in order to figure out what I had, I wanted to come see how he lived. And I didn't live in New Mexico at the time. I lived in Iowa. So I hopped on the train and rode Amtrak all the way to New Mexico to stay with him for a few days. And coming from 55 plus years living in Iowa, the landscape in New Mexico was very different. It was fascinating. So I'd been at his house less than 10 days. And I first started hearing the voice. It wasn't a spirit. I'd done this stuff for 27 years now. I knew better. This was not a ghost. Okay? The voice always came from the same spot, 10 miles east of us, inside the Sandia Mountain. Always came from the same place. So after a week of listening to it, quip and quote and talk about various things, instead of continuing to call it the voice from the mountain, I gave it a nickname. Came from the Sandia Mountain, so I decided to call it Sandia. It sounded like a name to me, and it made sense at the time, okay? So in Spanish, Sandia, that word means watermelon. That's because the top of the mountain has some stripes on it that look like the rind of a watermelon. So believe it or not, when I decided to nickname the voice from the mountain Sandia, he was listening. He immediately chuckled, piped up and said, "Watermelon head, that'll work." What? I didn't get it. I didn't understand at the time. I really didn't. But that "watermelon head, that'll work" line told me that whoever I was dealing with had kind of an interesting sense of humor. And it wasn't until a couple of months later that I figured out what the watermelon head reference really was alluding to. So at first this was all random. And Otter, when I first started hearing Sandia, I turned to him and I said, "You ever heard a voice from the mountain? It's not a ghost." And he went, "Oh, those guys." Like it was a normal thing. And for him it was, because he's been a shaman and practicing an energy person for a long, long time. And so he's used to listening to the voices from everywhere, and he just didn't pay him a lot of mind. But I knew it was a little different. So when Sandia spoke up, you never knew what he was going to say. He might comment on something about world news. He might contribute to a conversation we were having in our living room together. Or he, one night, told us who he thought should win America's Got Talent. We are not kidding. You can't make this stuff up. This is true. Like I said, this was really random. So it took a couple of months before this guy finally cops to where he's from. Okay? It shifted from random every few days to more consistent. And finally, he started telling us a little bit about home for him. So this is the area of the galaxy near Zeta Reticuli. Zeta Reticuli is a small constellation that you can't see from up here because it's down in the southern hemisphere. Sandia tells us there are several star nations that look very similar that call this area of the galaxy home. So meet Sandia. His real name is Tilcum. And he pronounces his home world as Pantel. And the apostrophe after the P is what he calls a lip flap, meaning you have to puff your lips. Pantel. It's the fifth planet orbiting the second of the two stars of the binary system that make up Zeta Reticuli. He's about 39, almost 40 light years away. He's told us that the Sandia Mountain Complex has been in existence since well before a white man set foot on this continent, and it's been here for several thousand years. Our Pueblo friends down in the southwestern area of the United States knew about that and knew that the area was sacred. Anyway, it runs about 2 miles deep, and at least a couple dozen folks work there on any given day. So early on, San Diego made it really, really clear. Please don't call me an alien. That term is really insulting. Please don't call me a gray. I don't call you a pink or a brown. You see, we're human too. We're just not Earth human. Genetically, you could call us distant cousins. So from then on, we chatted nearly every day with Sandia, and over the next year plus, between September of 13 and beginning of 2015, we got to know him really, really well. Like a friend that you talk to every day on the phone long distance, but you've never met in person, you still develop a deep friendship. It was like that. It wasn't until February 15 that he started introducing us to more specific folks. Drudy, Rahaz, or Radar, and Tni, or we just nickname her Teeny. Drudy, if you say the word or the woman's name Trudy, but start it with a J instead of a T, that's pretty close. She's kind of their cultural liaison. She's often the first voice folks hear when they come into Earth orbit and want to know how to find their people. She's introduced us and given us specifics about a number of other star nations. This is Radar. Radar is their pilot, one of them. He's their stellar cartographer. He's their long-range telepath, meaning his skill set goes beyond the usual of their people. And Tilcom assigned him as their Earth media specialist. Now, you wouldn't think that was a big deal. Thank you. But Radar's assignment was to understand the perspective that Earth humans have of extraterrestrials by examining extraterrestrials in their movies, books, songs, media, and discussions. So if it had a movie with a UFO or an ET in it, he had to watch it. He had to read it. He had to study it. So this young man knows our movies inside, outside, upside down better than some of us do. He's frequently quoting them to us. Radar became very good friends with the 14-year-old big brother's son, teenage son, of one of our local clan leaders. His friend is named Kie, and there's a black and white picture of Kie hanging upside down from a branch. As you come down the main hall, that's Radar's buddy. That's his best friend. So these two pal around together a lot. Tani, or Teeny, was introduced to us June of last year, specifically to help us work on a telepathy book, course, workbook, and it was Teeny that took information that we had started out with from understanding from my psychic career and from Otter's experiences, and she said, okay, let me give you the details now, let me fill in all the blanks. And it was Teeny that dictated the telepathy course that we're going to be teaching tonight and Sunday. Now, our Ponte friends have shared with us an awful lot of detail about the Sasquatch Nations and their special capabilities. They're buddies. They're buddies in this galaxy. One has what the other lacks. The little gray guys aren't real strong. But Big Brother is. And Big Brother has a body type that adapts to many environments, and the Ponti have been exploring this galaxy for 16 million years. And so they became friends as nations. The amazing thing for us is that what the Ponti told us absolutely 100% overlaps Kiwani's understandings, Sunbow's understandings, Mike Patterson's understandings. But we didn't know about any of these guys. We hadn't read their books. We hadn't studied them. We'd met Kiwani once at a conference. But we got our information from the Ponti, and then when we learned that the Sasquatch had been giving the same message to the Sasquatch researchers, it was extreme validation for us. So they asked us to come teach you telepathy. And want us to share with you so that you start spreading more information about how these connections work, and so that you understand some of the things that you yourselves have experienced and can put the puzzle pieces together within yourself and with each other. What have they told us? Well, first of all, at least some of the Big Brother nations are not primitive people just learning to make fire. Our Zeta friends tell us that the Sasquatch history on this planet alone goes back 20 million years to the beginning of the Neogene period. And what's the Neogene? Okay, after the dinosaurs died out, the age of large mammals first got going. That's at the beginning of that. Okay? So that's how old we're talking about here. Not only do the Big Brother nations have friends in high places, but some of them do travel a great distance just to come to Earth, meaning not all of them originate here. The Ponti tells us you can find Sasquatch people on many worlds because theirs is a body type that adapts very, very easily and very readily. They're very, very durable people. So they travel with, or are companions with, or live alongside a great many other star nations. And you can see evidence of that here on Earth. So which star nations pal around with which Big Brother clans? Well, that kind of depends on where in the world you're talking about. Because if you're in Appalachia, and the mountain range that runs from Canada down to Florida on the eastern edge of North America, Big Brother has been seen with giant canines, bipedal wolves, multi-dimensional human beings, lizard men, other woodmen. And by the way, that's their term for the plethora of nations that live in the forest, whether they're big or small, no matter which nation they're from. If they live in the forest with the Big Brother nations and each other, they just generally use the catch-all term, the woodman. They're part of the woodman. So up in the Four Corners area of the United States, the folks that pal around with Big Brother and live in his locale are very different. We're talking Navajo land. Blessings to our Navajo relatives here. The list of cryptids changes a little. According to the Navajo Times, back in the spring of 2012, there were more Pegasus, griffin, and centaur sightings that spring than there were Bigfoot, and that was unusual. You think? That's an oxymoron statement. That was unusual. But the commonness of other nations, not its, not things, nations, peoples, is very, very diverse. And we confess we haven't been told where all these folks are from. So if some of this Sasquatch really are friends with ET, or even ETs themselves, why create all these primitive structures? Why would they choose to live here on Earth in such a low-tech manner if they have friends in such high-tech places? Right? According to our Zeta friends, you do not have to be high-tech to achieve what they call advanced civilization level 0. They tell us that a number of the Sasquatch nations are actually at a higher advanced civilization level than we are. That's because they provide for their people. They make sure that everybody has food, and water, and shelter, and is taken care of. Because in 20 million years' time, what they figured out is a way of living that keeps everything in balance, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And makes them happy. Just makes them happy. They're happy the way they're living. Isn't that your goal? When it comes right down to it, why are you working at your jobs? Why are you out there earning money? Hopefully, you're working to live, not living to work. And you're working to live happily. That's the goal. Pretty simple. They live life in the now. And they find themselves and their people better off keeping it simple without the technology. We Earth humans, we have not reached advanced civilization level 0 yet. We don't provide food, water, and shelter for all our people. We just aren't there yet, folks. And we don't live in balance with our world. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Not even a little. Sandia says the Sasquatch Nations call themselves the beautiful people. We've also heard the loving people, the caring people. Okay? Beautiful means all those things to them. They call Earth humans the noisy ones, the naked ones, the messy ones, or just plain hairheads. They also refer to themselves and other sentient forest folk, no matter what their size, as woodmen, and this is how they spelled it for us. So what do our Star Nation friends from Pontel say about all this other crazy stuff surrounding Sasquatch? Like the UFOs that have been spotted, or unexplained lights that show up when you're out squatching. The strange floating fogs, dark, light, colored, luminescent, that seem to be under intelligent control. The moving balls of light that appear and disappear out of nowhere. The orbs that show up in so many photos, some of them with faces in them. What about those unexplained voices? Those imitated, unusual nature sounds? The weird mechanical noises that you hear? The infrasound stuff? What's up with all that? Or even the freaky images that are caught in 1/160th of a second frame of a camera moving faster than your eye can see. about those weird weather effects that seem to be under intelligent control or really localized? And our batteries that drain, or the electronics that suddenly malfunction for no good reason. Does Sasquatch really have the capability of becoming invisible at will? Or the ability to manifest something out of thin air? Can they bilocate themselves or other things through solid objects? And if you give Big Brother Sasquatch a camera and let him take pictures, yeah, but that was Mr. Mike Patterson's story to tell. If you have not seen some of his research, go to YouTube and look at the pictures that Sasquatch took. You'll be amazed. We won't spoil it. So first things first, let's start with the major reasons, or some of the major reasons, why Otter and I are here. Is Sasquatch telepathic? Yeah. Yeah. Just yes. We know that at least some of the Big Brother nations are. I can't vouch for all of them. I haven't been to Asia or down under or New Zealand or any place but North America to check. But here, we definitely have some telepathic nations. No, Ponti tell us there are 7 Sasquatch nations. Do the Sasquatch telepathically know when you are getting close to them? Well, yeah. They're telepathic, they sure do. Usually they check to see what your intent is the minute you enter into their territory. We call that probe telepathically, we call that getting pinged. Remember submarines and sonar, and the sonar goes around and pings if it hits something? So telepathic pinging. Can Sasquatch telepathically link with another species, like a bird, to observe you or follow you? You betcha they can. They call it seeing through the eyes of another. They can do it whenever they want. So here's where it starts to get even weirder, guys. Can Sasquatch use any kind of mind control on you? Can they wipe your memory? Yes. All telepathic nations, including the Sasquatch, can and would if they needed to. Yes, they do have the capability of controlling your actions and, quote, wiping your memory. They do. We're going to say this again because it's really important. When you get close to a telepathic nation whose first communication style or language utilizes telepathy, that nation can and could in an instant not only know why you're there and what you're doing and what your intent is, but they can take control of you, put you back into your car, and put you back driving down the road before you can spit. Yes, they can do that. They want to know when they ping you, are your intentions right-minded or not? They have homes and families to protect, guys. If you could, you would make sure that anybody who approached your kids was safe too, wouldn't you? So is it possible for you to end up with a headache or nausea after a really, really intense or long first telepathic connection of any kind, even if it's a gentle one? Yeah. If you're not used to it, you sure can. Mentally, for a while afterwards, you can feel like you're in a fog, like you're here but not here. Okay? After a big telepathic contact, especially one that takes over your actions, or involves memory altering of memory, it is not unusual at all to get to a place very quickly of complete and utter overwhelm. Emotionally, physically, and spiritually, you get to a place where you just want to collapse sometimes. You also might find you have some missing time. All of that is possible. With the missing time, or the quote, memory wipes, your memories aren't gone, guys. They're not gone. They're still in your heads. But you know how you have a dream in the middle of the night and it's not stored in real good, easy access, long-term recall? And 5 minutes after you wake up, somebody says, "Oh, okay, tell me about your dream," and you don't know? Okay. Your dream is still in your memories too, but the access pathway is not an easy one. Can you get those memories back? Yes, you can. You can. They will surface themselves frequently if you put yourself into an alpha state. You don't know when. This morning, Otter had a memory of Big Brother Sasquatch down by a creek in 1960. He was 10, and he remembers going fishing with his father, rounding a bush, and there's Sasquatch stands up with 2 trout in his hands and walks up the bank holding the trout. That memory didn't surface until he woke up this morning, 50-some years later. So it does happen. So all of these effects and symptoms should be considered both possible and, in this area, normal, guys. Breathe, stay calm, let things settle down emotionally, physically, spiritually. You're really okay. You're really okay. If any time you interact with a telepathic nation and you have nausea, headache, feel out of sorts, emotionally feel that overwhelm, these are the things that we recommend to all of you. First of all, record both your physical and emotional stuff, because your memory is going to be crappy for a few days. So write it down. Know that your memory may not be in your tip-top shape or your usual. Keep track of anything unusual that happens to you telepathically, in dream state, any weird experiences, at least for 72 hours, and expect more. It will increase. It will not decrease, it will increase. If you've got the nausea, headache stuff going on, treat yourself like you've got the flu. Do the chicken noodle soup thing if that's your thing. Treat your stomach as if you need easy to digest foods. If you really have a bad headache, pain relievers as needed. If the vomiting or the headache does not subside, please do go see a doctor. But the biggest piece of all of this is, if you had any kind of an incidence of a memory wipe, mind control, or one big honkin' telepathic experience that has got you grabbing for the Kleenex and feeling like a blubbering idiot, do not stay alone. Remember, your memory is funky, and your normal everyday routine is going to get real funky too. And you want somebody there with you during that first few days, just to make sure that you're behaving in a way that they observe makes sense and is healthy and balanced for you. Okay? So get a buddy. So when you get this really intense, controlling telepathic connection, and we're talking about Big Brother going, "You, I don't like you in my forest," and you're out of there. With a situation like that, Okay. We call that hard, fast, and strong telepathic neurological stuff. And your whole neurological brain system rebels. It's not used to that. It's not used to getting a dose of that, not at that strong a level. Okay? But here's the good news, and there is really good news, guys. Once you've had an experience like that, the ability to connect stays with you and continues to go both ways. What do I mean? I mean you're going to sense them easier, and they're going to sense you easier and quicker as well. You've been plugged into each other once, okay? And so that established pathway of them plugging into you and you plugging into them, that retains. Just about any telepathic interaction will make your telepathic learning faster and easier than if you had never had the interaction. In a way of speaking, you get wired for sound, okay? Now you just got to practice. This is a skill. Like any other skill you learn, it takes practice and feedback. Do not treat it as woo-woo. Telepathy is not woo-woo. Telepathy is a normal, everyday thing for all of us. And we'll explain that in our course tonight. So once you start practicing the telepathy, it doesn't take long before you're able to distinguish different voices. But it's really more than that. You're not just hearing a voice in your head or reading someone's thoughts like words on a page. Telepathic connections are an emotional recognition of an individual. See, telepathy runs on an emotional carrier wave. You cannot have a telepathic robot. They don't have the ability to connect emotionally, and they don't have the ability to plug into the collective consciousness. Telepathy runs on an emotional carrier wave. So after you've had an intense experiences, your emotions are doing this for a few days. You've had a big deal happen in your life. So you take a breath, you relax, but you do not stuff the feelings. You gotta allow those to surface. Why? Because telepathy is an inside job, guys. It starts in here. You have to get used to a level of emotional honesty. They're gonna ping you and figure out exactly what's going on inside of you. If you don't know you, if you haven't been able to emotionally face yourself, how are you gonna deal with another nation? Or are you going to keep having the headaches or the emotional roller coastering or all those other negative effects every time you get telepathically pinged? Well, I suppose you could, if your intentions going into the forest keep being wrong-minded. That's a word that we want to teach you guys to use and use regularly. There are right-minded actions, all one word, and there are wrong-minded actions. Most of you have right-minded actions, glad to say. But intention is everything. Intention, intention, intention. They're gonna probe and ping you anyway. They do. They know what you're gonna do before you do often. It's also really, really possible for your first telepathic connection with somebody to be really kind, really gentle, really funny. Like somebody invisible were climbing inside your head and going, Netahu. So finally, after your first big telepathic interaction with any nation that's telepathic, you might find that your personal spiritual connections with the rest of the universe shift quite a bit. You've been wired for sound, remember? So what's with the bright flashes of light and suddenly Sasquatch appears or disappears? You know, what's up with that? According to our Zeta teachers, the sudden flashes of light can happen a couple of different ways, okay? So when somebody opens a door or closes the door, like you do, you open your front door at night and the light spills out into the sidewalk or the street. That's one possibility. Because if there's a ship on the ground nearby, an entrance to a facility or a portal, can you get this kind of door opens, light spill effect? Well, yeah, sure. Our Ponte friends that say that they regularly go visit Big Brother, you know those big X's? They look for them from the air, as in, where do I need to sit down? Oh yeah, that's where the clan is. So X marks the spot from the air for them, helps them figure out where to land. But it's not unusual for the brothers to have visitors. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. Some of the mechanical sounds you hear when you're out squatching that are unexplained could come from a cloaked ship or a facility nearby, and somebody opens the door and you hear what's going on inside. We don't know. But our... Otter just said this is not the 1957 Chevy you see right here. This is really... But what we're saying is, when you hear unusual sounds out in the forest, we also know that the Sasquatch are extremely fabulous imitators of just about any kind of sound. Whether it's a boat motor or a mosquito or what have you, can they imitate nature sound as well as our sounds, like a snowmobile engine revving? Yeah, they're pretty good at it too. So when you hear the mechanical sounds out in the forest, are they Sasquatch or something else? Well, don't know. Not all the time. Can you also see a flash of light or an orb manifest when something or someone crosses from another dimensional space into this one? Yeah. It's not only possible, it's common. Our friends use this analogy. On Earth, you know you can have two very different environmental niches butting up against one another, okay? And there are species that can walk from one environmental niche right into the other one with no problem. In this example, you see where the forest butts right up against the beach, right? And it would be absolutely no problem for you to step from the forest right onto the beach. No big deal. There are advanced beings out there whose duo niche environment happens to straddle two different dimensions, not two different environmental niches here on Earth. If I can live in our world and their dimension, those are the two dimensions that I'm straddling, right? And there are multiple beings that have that ability and whose environmental living normal niche allows them to traverse from one dimension to the other as easily as if you or I were stepping from the forest onto the beach, like the Sasquatch. Do they know what's going on both in their dimension and ours is at the same time? Well, yeah. As a telepathic species, they can be there and watch what you're doing here very easily. By this token, if you take something from their dimension, dropping it into ours is no harder than tossing a pebble from the forest onto the beach. It's that simple for them guys. It's like, clink. That was hard. So when this manifesting happens from their dimension into ours, what are you going to experience? What are some of the possibles, okay? Flashes or balls of light, floating fog, vapor, popping electrical sounds, rushing winds, sudden bursts of cold, EMF changes, electronic malfunctions, or stuff just silently shows up. Any and all of the above can happen. So when Sasquatch are invisible, are they in their dimension or ours? Well, yeah, both. The dimensions overlap and exist in the same space. The Sasquatch simply choose to be visible or not on a moment-by-moment basis. Like you would choose to change from your red jacket to your green one. Hey, I don't want to wear this one today, let me just... And it's a decision. As easy as you change your clothes, they decide to be visible or not visible. By the age of 5 or so, when Big Brother's kids are taught when, where, why, and how, that it's important to stay unseen to the Earth humans. Every once in a while they slip up. They're kids. They get surprised, they get startled, or they just don't stop and think. Or they're kids, they just forget. Most of the time, though, it's a normal, everyday thing for them to what they call step across. I've heard them say step across, I've heard them say step between. Yeah, those are the two most common phrases. Yeah. Yeah. But for them, stepping across is no big deal. It's like stepping from the forest onto the beach and the beach back to the forest, guys. Real easy. This explains those single tracks you find in the middle of nowhere, okay? So you're Sasquatch. Walk up to a spot in their dimension. Stand on your left foot in their dimension. Put your right foot into our dimension. Lift it back up. Walk back off, laughing the whole way. That's how they do it. And they do it to mess with you on purpose because they have that kind of humor. They do. So when you find a single track 30 foot from nowhere and there's nothing leading up to it, nothing leading away from it, and that's all that's there, you go, how does this work? You know that they're somehow, somewhere real close by, looking at you, examining their single footprint and laughing their heads off. Yeah, probably standing behind you. So what about the weird weather effects, guys? All right, like sudden lightning, wind, rain. Is Sasquatch doing all that too? We don't know about all of the strange weather effects, but our friends tell us that if you have a ship, UFO to you and me, you can control the weather. They also tell us that there are advanced beings who directly influence the weather here on Earth that are 100% dimensional nations that usually don't come take a physical body unless they need to deliver a message. And I went, oh, okay. What are you going to do when a Ponte says, here's how it is? And I'm going, oh, okay. All right, I'll write that down. And that's how a lot of our teaching, learning happened. I didn't ask them for the information. I never push them for technology. I wait for them to volunteer stuff, but sometimes they volunteer zingers that just make us go, wait, what? So, if dramatic weather events happen like this, how do you know who's responsible? Okay, well, because multiple nations have the ability to affect the weather, I guess you don't until you ask. Is Bigfoot intentionally draining my batteries or mucking up my equipment? No, not usually. The EMF changes that are responsible for these things happen as a natural byproduct side effect of when they cross from one dimension into another, back and forth, either ours to theirs or theirs to ours, okay? if you're near that entrance or portal. If they're standing right next to you and they're not crossing dimensions, but they're in a dimensional state standing next to your equipment, can they affect it? Yeah. Yep, they can. I mean, all these are possible. Or Sasquatch is just messing with you. They do have a good humor. Side note, those of you who take lots of photographs or video, because we have seen lots of evidence where unusual phenomena are captured on a single frame or maybe 2 frames in a row. When you run an HD camera, it's 60 frames a second. When you only catch an image for a 60th of a second, most of the time your conscious mind doesn't process it. For those of you with video of Sasquatch areas, go back and look at your footage again, and if you can, slow it down and do the frame by frame by frame by frame, you'll find things that surprise you, I guarantee you. Look in the backgrounds. So, okay, let's get back to why we're here again. The easiest way to say all of this, guys, is that we all have the internal hardwiring for telepathy, all right? We have the pineal gland. We have the amygdala in our hippocampus. We have the general brain chemistry, everything. We got it all. We can do this. But telepathically, as Earth humans, they say, we suck. We do, that's exactly how they say it. We are worse than tone deaf. And I'm going, okay, we suck and we're worse than tone deaf. Can you elaborate on that, please? So what makes them say this? And why do they want us to learn our telepathy now? And they're really insistent. Because both the Ponte and the Big Brother nations tell us that our planet has environmental changes coming up on us very, very quickly. The Sasquatch have seen these changes before. They have seen the beginnings of ice ages build until they really start, and they know what's coming. And they tell us, they both tell us, these changes are not any easy for any nation to handle. And we're going to need each other's help to get through it. They tell us that Earth humans' lack of telepathy has now become a huge detriment to the communication between our peoples. If we want to talk to them in their primary language, we need to learn how to do that now. Because whether we like it or not, guys, the truth is we're running out of time here. None of you guys are dummies. You guys all see what's happening with the weather. You guys all can think back, what was the weather like when I was a kid? Why is it so different now? Why are we having record extremes year after year after year after year? We set and break last year's record of the worst of whatever it is. We're running out of time, guys. We haven't quite gotten to the drastic weather patterns here in North America that really alter food production. Africa has. Africa has got 5 countries in such terrible drought. They literally have millions of people starving. It would be like if you took the western third of the United States, threw it in drought, starved those people out, and the eastern part of the United States said, we don't care. We don't care. Africa is starving right now because of the extreme drought that has hit them. Why do they say that we are worse than tone deaf telepathically? I mean, okay, I'll accept that we suck, but why are we worse than tone deaf? Because not only do we not listen to our telepathy, we tell ourselves and our kids that it's not real, that it's make-believe, it's pretend, or worse than that, it's schizophrenia. We train our own children right out of their innate telepathic skill set. No wonder we have a hard time trusting our own telepathy, guys. We had no teacher. We didn't have our parents validate our telepathy. And in fact, we had our reality dismissed. How the heck are you supposed to learn a new skill when the primary people that you are to trust and respect say, that's not real, that's make-believe, that's pretend, let's go do something real. Now, if you want to change all this, if you want to learn how to develop your own telepathy, well, we've had kind of a really good teacher and friend give us a few shortcuts and some really good pointers to make it easier. Among the things that we're going to teach tonight and Sunday night in Telepathy 101, which is a week-long course, by the way, condensed down to 2 hours. So we have to go hard, fast, and strong. Be prepared. It's much more than just a voice in your head. We teach you how to get started. We teach you how to hold a telepathic state. We teach you about trusting your own perceptions better. We teach you how to maximize your own skill set. And we teach you the protocols taught to us for all telepathic nations. So our focus here is to help you get farther faster. We like classes that eliminate the BS and cut to the chase. So that's how we teach, guys. So Friday night tonight, 6 to 8. Sunday night, 5 to 7, I think. Come hang out with us. We promise you'll have fun. So here's what we've got. $25, and you can pay us when you arrive. We'll take your name. We'll have a little change, but if you've got change, bring it. So come take a bite out of their apple. It's yummy. Any questions? Questions from anybody? We good? But our camper is the one with the white easy up in the parking lot, and you notice a whole circle of chairs there. We had a whole bunch of fun last night kibitzing, and feel free to stop by and share. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.